A few people asked me for a quick video walkthrough of how that video of the new brow setup I made works, and welcome to that video. So the way this brow setup works is based on one single NURBS curve that flows underneath the surface here. So if we turn off the geo, you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 CVs, and the yellow controls and then the intermediate red controls represent each of those CVs 1 to 1. So you'll see if we grab this one, it perfectly moves that CV, and this one is always going to be right between those two, but that represents that little one in there, and then this one represents that one, although there is some stuff going on to constrain that, which we'll get into in a second. But in general, basically, there's just joints riding along on this curve. And if you want to know how to attach joints to a curve, it's very simple. Just go to Google and type in one word, point on curve info, and then a space, and then attach to curve, and there will be plenty of tutorials online showing you how to do that. I honestly don't even remember how to do it off the top of my head. I just have it scripted out and run it each time. Just involves some very simple node editor connections that you need to make. You could also do it with motion paths, but I've just never personally messed around with that. I've always found it easy enough to just do the attach to curve. So the practical usage of this brow, like how an animator would use it, is that you would grab these yellow controls and move them around intuitively. And you've got this furrow control, which more or less is the same as the other yellow controls, but the way I have it set up in this case is that it automatically moves to some extent with the inner control and the peak control, and you can adjust that with the constrain between and auto furrow attributes. So auto furrow is basically some extra correction to make it a little simpler for an animator to use. So basically, with it at neutral, if we bring our inner brow down without auto furrow, it's just kind of going to automatically position itself between these two major controls. But with auto furrow, it's going to go down when we bring it down, and then also down a little bit when you bring it up, just kind of to create those common expressions that you would see when pulling the inner brow up and down. And then if we turn auto furrow off, you still have a constraint between there, but it's not doing any special correction. To get it to totally stay in place, though, you could turn both of those off, and now it's just like you have 4 brow controls to place wherever you want. You've also got this major control that can move it all around. So you've got this attribute here called orient child joints, and that's going to determine whether the actual hairy area of the brow, the central area, rotates to match the orientation. And I normally keep this at about 0.5. And the way that works is if we expose these joints, you'll see that for each span there's 2 joints. There's one overall joint, which is representing the whole mass, and then there's a smaller joint that's parented to it, and this joint automatically rotates based on that value we just adjusted, and that only has weights painted right on the brow hair there. So if we unlock this geo and show you what's painted here, basically in NG Skin Tools, I made sure I painted the whole area to represent the first layer of joints, the bigger joints, and then for the smaller joints, it's just this area, so that you have the option to dial that rotation in and out. And of course, there are individual controls for each of those joints where you can totally move them around and do whatever you need to with them to create the perfect pose. Complete control. Now this file here, this is a test build where instead of using a Bezier curve, I use a linear curve. So you got these very linear sort of shapes. So that is an alternative option if you don't like how soft the overall shaping of the brow is. But this isn't something the animator can adjust. This is just something as a rigger that you can think ahead about when you're creating a brow setup like this. And as far as more technical info on this, the way that I am orienting those joints to the curve is through, as of right now, something called a tangent constraint, which allows you to constrain any object to any NURBS curve, and it'll automatically rotate along with it. I don't know if it's the most efficient way, but it's the simplest now. I might do some speed tests later and replace it with some more node-based methods if it ends up being too slow, but for now it seems pretty stable. And the way I'm getting this furrow to automatically go down and up depending on where it's positioned is based on some remat value nodes. So basically I have 5 nulls above this and 4 of them will automatically be adjusted based on the translate Y values of the inner and peak brow controls. Nothing complicated whatsoever. And then the overall positioning of it when furrow is off or on is just a point constraint between these two controls. And I think that's pretty much it. There's really nothing that complicated going on here, but I think this setup works really great personally. Let me know if you have any concerns with this. I can address them before I actually implement this into Kayla 2 and future rigs.